Have you ever loved the game series so much that you have to play the newest game in the series as soon as possible, even if it's not even released in the West, so you go out of your way to make a Japanese PSN account, buy a Japanese PSN card to buy the game, connect your PS5 to your PC via capture card to play the game through OBS with a machine translation software that translates the text in real time? You haven't? Well, the Trail series is that for me, and as the 13th game in the series, Kiseki, got its Japanese release last month, I jumped right into it. And after finishing this very interesting experience, I just have to put my thoughts into words and make this review. But before I jump into it, I do have to acknowledge a couple things. First, this review will be as spoiler-free as possible. I will not touch on any specifics of the story, so fear not. I do have to mention a couple things about the structure and returning characters, but it is all stuff that was in the first trailer and the game reveals it in the first minutes, so I do not consider that a spoiler. And the other thing is that no, I do not speak Japanese and I played the game using machine/AI translation. The translation tech has gotten really good since I played Daybreak 2 in a similar way, and I would say 99% of the sentences are easily understandable, so comprehending what is happening is easy. I personally really enjoy the experience and the additional challenge of it, but I do recognize that a certain minute details and that extra flavor in dialogue is lost without actual localization, which I'm a big advocate for. Oh, and if you want to hear my thoughts on the series in general, check out my previous video where I go through all the games. But with that out of the way, is the game any good and how it compares to the other games in the series? Let's find out. Kiseki starts a few months after the events of Kiseki Crimson Sin, or Trails Through Daybreak 2 as it is known in the West. The Semurian continent is on the edge of a breakthrough as the first manned spaceflight is only few days away, and the conspiracies around this historical event causes everybody to search for the truth on the situation. How the game builds out this mystery is brilliantly done, as it kept giving more and more information throughout the game, and even though certain things are telegraphed quite early on, I was still physically nervous of what was going to happen until the very last moments of the story, which caused the ending to be the most impactful and effective ending in the series for me. It's executed nearly perfectly. Overall, the game's story is so well written. The first half of this 100-hour game can feel slow as it spends a lot of time setting up characters, but as I've always been a character over plot kind of person, I didn't mind it, but your mileage may vary. It was the same for me in Daybreak 2, where I can understand some of the criticism the game gets, but I still really enjoyed it because I just love these characters. The character work in this game is amazing and the Connect events are easily the best in the series. I was already crying over the first few events and the game kept that up the whole way. This game really solidified for me that the Calvard cast is easily my favorite of all the arcs. It also reminded me of how detrimental leaving romance choices for players a la Cold Steel can be for the narrative potential of a game. Romance choices can be fun, but having canonical relationship storylines written into the main story can just grip your heart so effectively. I'll just leave it at that. But what about the structure? Is Kiseki the new Reverie, as people have been saying? The answer is not really. It is true that the game is split into 3 routes and there is a semi-optional additional dungeon where all the characters group up just like in Reverie. But wherein Reverie was an epilogue to both Cold Steel and Crossbell arc, at its core Kiseki is still fully the third Daybreak game, just with a different name. From the top of my head I would say over 50% of the game is spent with Van and the members of the Arkwright Solutions office, and the game's core story is all about them. And then the rest of the game is split between the Cold Steel gang of Reen, Crow, Fee, Altina and Toa, and the Picnic gang plus Kevin, so Rufus, Lapis, Swin, Nadia and Kevin, who finally makes his return to the series. But the storylines of these 2 other routes are just supporting the main story, providing the player with an additional perspective on things. The Reen and Kevin routes are impactful and have some of the coolest moments moments in the game, but don't expect too much character development on that side, which I think is the right choice. They have their moments, but the main focus of the game is on Van and the group around him. I was really afraid that Kite would sideline Van and the rest of the Calvart group to bring in the old characters, but luckily that wasn't the case. The overall flow of the routes was good, very traditional trails, aka a lot of going around the town speaking to various groups of people while doing some side quest, and then the game funnels into a dungeon to reach the climax of that particular section. And luckily no moments where you have to stop in the middle of a story beat to jump into a different route to unlock something to progress. All the routes are their own thing while still weaving together narratively. I'm still not the biggest fan of the additional dungeon because it always disrupts the flow of the story, and the main story already has enough dungeons and combat for my tastes, but it did feel less grindy and shorter than in Reverie or Daybreak 2, so making through it to see the small story conclusion on that side didn't annoy me too much. And speaking of combat, I was already loving the new combat mechanics that Daybreak introduced, but somehow they just keep making it better. At its core, it still has the same flow of starting the combat in action mode, where you can fight enemies in real time, with couple new features like being able to slow down time, and certain characters can power up on the field, like for example Judith can transform into her Dream Cat's form to deal more damage. This does spend your S-boost points, so you do have to be considerate when to use it, so that when you switch into the turn-based mode you don't find yourself without any, because unlike in previous games where you just use your S boost to pump up your stats and use S crafts, this time they have additional functions. First, you can double boost and get an additional turn for your characters, and second is the Brave Orders. Yes, Brave Orders are back, mixing up the flow of the battle quite nicely, and as they also use the S-boost points, it just adds a really satisfying resource management aspect to the already strategic combat. I also enjoy how aggressive the enemies can be, as they can use the same tactics as you can. Seeing an enemy use their S-crafts or give Brave Orders is always terrifying in the best way possible. Overall, Kiseki was a transformative moment for the series for me. For the first half I was kind of wondering where in the hell this was going, but it just got better, and then it just hits you with so much. Funnily enough, the soundtrack was kind of the same, where at first I wasn't really vibing with it, but some of the later dungeon and boss themes go so hard. After finishing the game, I was a bit confounded. I couldn't believe that even after 13 games this series can still find ways to totally surprise me, but at the same time some of those moments only hit because it is the 13th game in the series. There truly is nothing like Trails in the game industry. I cannot wait to see where the series goes from here, as it is apparently moving towards the conclusion. I hope that the game will get its Western release as soon as possible, so the more rational and patient Trails fan can experience this masterpiece. All in all, I just have to say that Kiseki at the moment is my new favorite Trails game. It has the best moments for my favorite characters in the series, the story takes bold steps forward while honoring and recontextualizing things that happened all the way back in the Sky trilogy. The gameplay is so much fun, it really is that good in every aspect. Thank you for watching, and I hope you found the review interesting. I know this might not be relevant for many, as the Western release timing is still unknown, but hopefully it can get you hyped up. And if you really want to play it, the machine translation tech has gotten really good, so the experience is very enjoyable, but it is not optimal or comparable to real localization, which I'm still a big fan of. If you have any additional questions, comment them down below, and if you want to talk spoilers, maybe DM me on Twitter/X so the comment section would stay spoiler free as possible. I would love to discuss the game with somebody else that has finished it. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing. Thank you and have a great day.